Okay, I saw a very disturbing report tonight on, I believe it was CBC, Canadian Broadcasting, a documentary called Point of View about Ontario training schools in the 1960s. Now, we already had horrific tales about child abuse with Indigenous children in Canada. Aboriginal children. And now we've learned what happened with the poor white trash children. They were also put in institutions called training schools. They came from abusive households with the worst kinds of parents. And then the courts took them away and put them in government schools, just like what it sounds like with the Indigenous schools. What kind of insane fuck-faced people are our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents? Alcoholic sounds like major alcoholic problem in previous generations. Super bad, yes. And giving the government the job to raise children from unbelievably broken homes and vicious, violent terrorists that you have to live with, called your parents and probably your siblings. So, unbelievable nightmare again revealed to us. It was all hushed up in those days because we knew the name training school. What did it mean? I don't know. We heard it talked about, yes, by the adults, yes. What did it mean? Prison. For kids. Military boot camp style. Anyways, it's on there. And again, it's like, no, good God, now another one. But really, it's like, how many kids are adults now? How many people are grandparents now? Well, they had somebody who was a grandparent on there talking about being in those training schools and also the unbelievably horrific state of affairs of her parents. So, some of the things, I don't know, because I'm just like over here watching the History Channel there, and it's Ancient Aliens, and they're talking about these tall, monoliths all over the world, and how they could be connected to the pyramids, and how this is all connected to, electrical fields, ancient sites. We've been talked about on the internet, YouTube, for quite a long time about a solar flash. And the solar flash is supposed to be part of something called the event, which is a massive change in consciousness on planet Earth. It's when, in the popcorn analogy, the vast majority of people pop. I mean, pop is spiritual awakening, yes, from living as an ego to becoming something you've never been before. A higher consciousness, source energy being, and without having this experience before. Some people are very interested in enlightenment and Buddhism. And some people are like, I don't even like looking at the deck of tarot cards because I know there's a card in there called Death. And that card is worse than the card called the Devil. And I don't like tarot cards because of that, because I don't ever want to get those two cards. So, there's people that are just like scared because they learned that information from their grandmother when they were a kid, when the grandmother was telling them about, horrible, horrible devils. When the kid was 3 years old or something. So, comfort foods for many people are chicken soup. And your chicken soup is you killing a chicken in factory farming. Meat is murder. I mean, I just looked at that album. It came up, on this big screen TV. Sometimes they got the music channel. And, it was Meat is Murder. I think was it Depeche Mode? And I do remember, I don't know, there were people when I lived in university residence who were really into that kind of music. And I know the names of the music bands because they talked about the bands among each other. And in those days, I wasn't a real big fan of it. A few songs here and there I actually liked, but it wasn't like I was going to go out and buy too many of those songs, although I did buy an album, Strange Advance, which was very spacey looking back on it. Like Strange Advance, I bought that. I really liked that band, and that band was very spacey. They looked like they came from a spaceship. Now, looking back, does that mean that perhaps that was a sign that I am a starseed? Because I still don't know, and I'm looking back for evidence. Well, not directly, but I'm going to mark that down as yes. Okay, well. Okay, what else can I tell you? I know there's a bunch of things just below the surface bubbling along there. So it's just that this great, maybe you can see it. Here's all the people doing like a peace circle at like Stonehenge or someplace. And there's these big monuments there. And what they showed was, like if there's like, I don't know, earth currents, there's like energies, ley lines, and I do clean ley lines, and I have for many years. LEYLINES. Energy lines like acupuncture lines on your body, and the same thing on the earth. Anyways, they showed like, you could get an enormous amount of energy through all of these ancient sites and ancient standing stones and underground rivers and all kinds of places where energies are, earth energies are. And maybe instead of the solar flash coming from the sun, maybe the solar flash comes from the sun and then it activates, enhances all of these existing earth energies. Because a long time ago we were told, and I was reminded today, that the job of earth ascension was primarily that of the planetary spirit, Gaia. And she was going to do the heavy lifting. But she needed more help among the humans. So she called for advanced souls from around the universe to come to planet Earth and incarnate themselves as humans. with the hope that those people, even though they're going into deep density, which means deep forgetfulness of who they really are, into deep, deep, deep brainwashing into becoming egoic humans. Muggles, I've been doing talks about muggles. Well, yes, becoming a muggle, being born into a muggle family of various states of dysfunction, but even the best are muggle families. And living with vicious violence all the time. If you were a starseed, there were supposed to be, according to Dolores Cannon, the hypnotic regressionist who hypnotized people, thousands of people over her career, and she told us 3 waves of volunteer souls came in after the nuclear bombs were exploded after World War II to raise the consciousness of humanity so that we wouldn't have a nuclear war. It's just that, I don't know. There's been certain people, the flat earth people on, Instagram, who also talk about, a lot of the pictures purported to be military films of nuclear explosions at nuclear test sites. And even people have questioned the video photographic evidence of what they said happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because there's still a significant and growing number of people who question authentic history. And even question, are nuclear weapons real? Because it was like, I don't know, there was another person who was like, we've had so many talks about, were the moon landings in like 1969 real? And more looking back at the film, this is like really cheesy looking television studio production. Made for TV, we went to the moon. And somebody else on Instagram showed in their backyard garage how, with the proper camera setup and, really interesting ways of using just stuff that you could probably buy at the hardware store in the Walmart, or I don't know, just some tubes, some, metal tubes and the right angles and the right miniaturization backgrounds. And he simulated, not using CGI, no, just using, a camera and stuff and fire, simulated pretty close what it looked like, what they gave us as the Saturn V blasting off at Cape Canaveral. And those blast-off pictures, someone simulated it really good. So if they could do it, then Hollywood could do it. Well, I didn't go to Cape Canaveral. And if there were rocket ships going over there, well, I don't know. I see airplanes too. But I know some of the people say it's impossible to go to the moon because of the Van Allen radiation belts. I know, but it's endless things that you can never test. Do you want to test a nuclear device to see if it's real or not? How close do you want to get? I mean, even like the 1950s footage of like Bimini Atoll that they say was a nuclear blast, I don't know. The Halifax explosion was a non-nuclear blast, and I learned about it in a grade 5, I think. We were reading about it. We never saw it, but it was written about an enormous blast of a munition ship that somehow had an accident and it blew up, and it blew up a lot of the city of Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada during one of the world wars. So you get an awful lot of TNT, and you could get a mushroom cloud that they said, comes with nuclear weapons. What's the difference? Well, it's just, The fear factor goes off the chain if you have got weapons so big that they can destroy cities. And then if you're the 1% and you tell people you have these weapons and you know you got good fake it film, and that's the only thing that people can see because those films are, shown at the movies and on TV and it's owned all by the 1%, then you can really scare the hell out of a world population into thinking that there are opposing parties and they're all fake, right? We know that. They still talk about the Republicans and the Democrats and the Americans versus the Russians still on some of the mainstream TVs. All that fucking lies in order to what? It's the 1% that own it all. And who controls the 1%? I don't know. What else do we need to know tonight? Well, it's just I was starting to talk about this great solar flash that is supposed to be from benevolent extraterrestrials who have been, monitoring us and to see when we're ready for the great solar flash that can be amplified by, the Earth itself in order to shift us into a better vibration so we can manifest heaven on earth better as in the fifth dimension, 5D, because that's what was supposed to happen. And it could be, because in the popcorn analogy, a small number of people, equivalent to a small number of kernels of popcorn, pop early when you're doing a bag of microwave popcorn. It might even be a shape of a bell curve. And most people pop. And at that point, maybe that's when we experience the solar flash. And then maybe there's some slow people that are like still not getting it after the great number of people popped, but then they get it. And then we hope that there's nobody left at the end, like those kernels that won't pop.